Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And well, today is Throat Punch Thursday.
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Who's ready?
It's Throat Punch Thursday, bitch.
Oh, that is always hilarious. I don't know why. Physical comedy, always hilarious, always hilarious. But in any case, thank you so much for tuning in today. We always appreciate you guys. Always appreciate you tuning in. As you can see, I am remote once again today. Pretty much every Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going to be doing this out of my studio. Hopefully, we're going to have a studio set up here where I'm going to be able to do the program from as well. But we're going to have a good old time talking about the news of the day. And trust me, we've got some very, very good news, some fun stuff to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and kick it off the way that we usually do. You know how we do it. We always start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. They make rifle and pistol caliber barrels that are available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. Now, they're available at pretty much any length that you could be looking for. If you've purchased an AR in the last few years, there's a good chance you already have one of their barrels. So why not get another one? Anyway, check them out today. Once again, hitmanindustries.net. Then you've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all levels of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. You need to find out why. All you have to do is go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org, and check them out today. Then we've got the best in concealed carry holsters available on the market, and that would be at hawgholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. I know, funny way of spelling it, but that's because they like helping Americans wear guns. How do I know that? Because they're going to give you a discount if you purchase your Hog holster. All you have to do is use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there, and you're going to get your Hog holster on discount today. And then you've got the place where you can find everything that you need except the gun, and that would be at uscombatgear.com. They specialize in all things tactical. We're talking boots, we're talking hats, we're talking pants, we're talking backpacks, we're talking optics, you name it, they have it. And guess what? They specialize in group prices. So you need to get your group together, get your agency together, get your Boy Scout troop together, whoever it is, get them together and get on over to uscombatgear.com, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun. Also want to remind you once again, if you're looking for a place to find your 2A news, place to find Second Amendment news on the regular, I mean, we're talking every day, or at least every weekday, in your email box, you need to visit 2anews.us, 2anews.us. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not just trying to pimp this website. What I'm hoping you'll do is you'll sign up for their e-newsletter. It's right there at the top where it says subscribe here. Then you will get all of these phenomenal stories delivered to you in your email box every day. And guess what, folks? It is free. That's right. It costs you absolutely nothing except the time it takes you to set up. So whether you're looking for stuff from AmmoLand, you're looking for stuff from the Reload, you're looking for stuff from Bearing Arms, AmmoLand, when you name it, they've got it. We've got it there. We've got video blogs, right, where people can go and you can find out who's saying what on video. Oh, wait, look, there's the rundown. We've got deals that are available for you out there that are being posted at various different websites. Folks, everything you need 2A is right there. All you got to do is sign up. We make it real simple. Once again, go to 2anews.us. Check them out today. Please take a moment. Go ahead and sign up. This is put together, by the way, by 2A News. 2A News is one of the sponsors. They're one of the production groups that put together this particular program. So anyway, go there, check it out, and sign up today. Get your 2A News today. Also want to remind you, if you're watching this program during the 3 o'clock hour on the West Coast, or you're watching it during the 6 o'clock hour on the East Coast, you are watching us live, which means we're also taking your comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Tell us what you think about the program. Tell us where you're watching us from. And I tell you what, all we care about is that it's interesting, right? And the best way to be interesting, quite frankly, is for you to disagree with us. Because when you disagree with me, well, then I get an opportunity to mock you.
Oh, wow, was that a mockingbird?
Man, is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
That's right. That is the official bird, official state bird of the state of Florida. That's right, the mockingbird. How funny is that? Anyway, folks, just tune in. We would just love to hear from you. We tune in live, comment, give us a shout out, let us know what you think. Once again, as far as I'm concerned, just would love to hear from you. All right, let's get into today's news. And we're going to start with a ruling out of the Supreme Court. And this is a pretty big one, right? This is a huge one because this one has to do with, right now nationally, if you are, or at least before this, if you were a firearms owner who happened to use marijuana, you were barred from owning guns. That's right. If you went to the 4473, if you wrote on there that you were a habitual user of illegal narcotics in this particular, or illegal drugs, in this case, marijuana, you could be deemed, or would be deemed, illegal. It was against the law for you, federal law for you to own firearms. Well, the Supreme Court has ruled on this, and they said, nope, that's not the case. This right here is being reported by CBS News. Supreme Court sides with Texas man who challenged law barring drug users from having guns. The Supreme Court on Thursday ruled in favor of a Texas man who challenged a federal law that bars certain drug users from having firearms. In a unanimous decision in the case U.S. v. Hamani, the justices found that Ali Hamani's prosecution for having a firearm while he was an unlawful drug user is inconsistent with the Second Amendment. Hamani allegedly was only an occasional user of marijuana when the FBI found a handgun at his Texas home in 2022. The ruling from the Supreme Court is narrow. Since the justices did not strike down the law at the center of the case, in its entirety. Instead, the High Court said the government cannot automatically disarm a person who uses marijuana a few times a week. Neil Gorsuch authored the majority opinion for the court. The government, he wrote, quote, asks us to conclude that anyone who regularly uses marijuana is categorically violent and dangerous without any further showing. All based on a little more than its current say-so, one at odds with its own regulatory actions, and affording a government that kind of broad power to designate any group as dangerous and thereby disqualify its members from having a gun should risk allowing it to quickly swallow the Second Amendment. Now, and this is what's really interesting. So here's the thing about this. What they're basically saying is, look, just because you are a user of something does not mean that you are a habitual user, which, by the way, happens to be kind of consistent with the way in which we deal with alcohol, for example. So in other words, if someone is an alcoholic, they're not supposed to be able to own or possess firearms, right or wrong? Now, is there a difference between using alcohol and being addicted to alcohol? Yes, there obviously is. Is there a difference between using marijuana and being addicted to marijuana? Even if you are a regular user in both cases, does that mean that you are addicted? Not necessarily. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court unanimously decided. That what they unanimously said was you cannot just make that leap, that because they're a regular user, that means that they are addicted. Right. The other thing that was interesting in his decision and in the opinion was when he talked about how you're trying to say that they are categorically violent and prone to or likely to use a firearm for violence. Now, here's a door that opens up. What that means is because right now, when they first made it so that getting a felony conviction would mean that you lost your right to keep and bear arms or to own or possess firearms, that was when felonies were almost all violent, right? Meaning it involved assault, it involved battery, it involved murder, attempted murder, rape, something along those lines. There is a move, and there are cases that are right now moving through the court system where nonviolent felons, for example, someone in the state of California who wrote a check over a certain amount, maybe you wrote a check for over $950. They are now banned for life from being able to own or possess firearms anywhere in the country because they've been convicted of a felony. There are crimes that are non-violent, sometimes paperwork felonies, that would then bar someone from being able to own or possess firearms, right? Great example. Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies in the state of New York, basically for basically saying that, yeah, I paid this money and I paid this money as a legal expense as opposed to as a campaign expense, even though they never really proved that it was a campaign expense. That now, because he's convicted of 34 felonies, he is not allowed to own or possess firearms. Well, does that mean he's violent? Under Bruin, what they're saying is that you have to look historically. And what historically does this law say? In other words, how does this law that you are applying that's banning someone or prohibiting someone from owning or possessing firearms or restricting them from owning firearms, is there a historical basis for it? Well, historically, the only people who were banned from owning or possessing firearms were either non-citizens, or not even non-citizens, people who were here illegally, number one, people who were here in the country illegally, but number two, people who were convicted of violent crimes, people who were deemed to be violent. Well, being convicted of writing a bad check, does that make you violent? So I really do think they're laying down a foundation here that could cause you to see that eventually people who are convicted of non-violent felonies may be able to get their gun rights back, or may just say, yeah, you don't lose your right to keep and bear arms. Anyway, I think this is a good ruling. I think this is a correct ruling, especially considering how many states actually have passed laws legalizing marijuana for not just recreational use, but for medicinal purposes. I think this is a good decision. The fact that the president and the White House just I won't say they didn't decriminalize drugs, but what they did do was they lowered the classification of marijuana to make it so that it's not I forget what class it is, but it's no longer on the same schedule that it was before. Overall, I think this is a good decision. I think it's laying a foundation to allow people who are non-violent felons, or non-violent criminals. I think it's opening a door for them to be able to get their gun rights back. And I think overall, this is something to be celebrated by the gun rights community. I know some of y'all out there, some of y'all who are part of the law and order, right? I know you're like, well, no drugs, and you know what? Like I said, however you feel about law and order, you also need to make sure that we're protecting people's rights. And if people have the right to own or possess firearms, and if historically the only people that we've barred from access to that right are those who are violent, then only the violent should be subject to these sorts of restrictions. Anyway, once again, excellent ruling. Hats off to the Supreme Court. Once again, just note, this was a unanimous ruling, right? This wasn't one or two. This wasn't the majority. This wasn't a 5-4, wasn't a 6-3, wasn't the conservatives. It was every single justice agreed. Now, they all had different points, and I'm sure as the concurring opinions come in, you'll start to see some differences in people's logic, but in the end, it all came down to the same thing. All right, another interesting thing. More from the alleged terror plot that was taking place, that was being planned against UFC 250, against the folks there against the White House in Washington, D.C. last weekend. And this one is an interesting one because I already told you, and we already talked about this yesterday, or was it maybe the day before yesterday, where this plot was really being some of the people in this plot were not from the left, but they were from the horseshoe right. Well, now we're finding out as we get more information that, well, maybe there are some folks here from the left. And one great example is this individual right here. Alleged ringleader of UFC terrorist plot is a Mexican illegal alien. It says here, United States Department of Homeland Security released the following statement announcing that the suspected ringleader of the failed terrorist plot against UFC Freedom 250 is a Mexican illegal alien who overstayed a B2 visitor visa. According to local reporting, the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrested Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez, a Mexican illegal alien in Omaha, Nebraska on June 14 for his alleged involvement in the plot to carry out a mass casualty attack against government officials and other attendees at Sunday's event at the White House. 4 other co-conspirators were arrested over the weekend in Ohio, Missouri, and California. On June 16, the Department of Justice announced federal charges for 5 suspects, including Alvarez, who went by the alias Shepard. The FBI assessed that Alvarez was responsible for planning, organizing, and directing the planned attack. Alvarez detailed the plot in an encrypted group chat, including the planned use of counter snipers and drones, with explicit intention of being as deadly as we can get. Alvarez and his co-conspirators face federal charges of conspiracy to commit murder and conspiracy to commit violence and on White House grounds. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has lodged a detainer for Alvarez. Quote, this illegal alien from Mexico should never been allowed in our country, or in this case, they should have said to remain in our country because he overstayed his visa. He was a ringleader of a failed terror attack targeting UFC Freedom 250 at the White House, said Acting Assistant Secretary Lauren Baez. He and his co-conspirators now face charges of conspiracy to commit murder and conspiracy to commit violence on White House grounds. He will face justice swiftly and be removed from our country. Now, the interesting thing about this, and this is why, I keep warning those some of these folks, and I will continue to say this. We've talked a lot about the violence, about potential terror violence from the left, right? This guy clearly is organizing it from the left, but he was able to convince folks from the horseshoe right? So those people who've decided that they want to be part of the grievance community from the right, he was able to trick them. He turned them into useful idiots in order to get them to conspire to do these things and be involved in a terror plot. And once again, this is just 5 individuals. Total, there were about 19 individuals who were part of this communication. Right now, we don't know if all of them are from the right or all. We know that some of them are from the right and some of them were from the left. But once again, people who are buying into these ideologies, this belief that the only way in which we as a country can succeed is by tearing it all down? Look, we have an election process. The problem we have is we've done on the right a poor job of communicating what it is that's important, of being able to communicate to people who actually agree with us on many, many issues, but they just don't know it. They don't know it because academia is not telling the truth. The mainstream media is not telling the truth. Entertainment's not telling the truth. And so there are a lot of people out there who just don't, they don't really know what we believe in. And because we're looking at proxies to go into some of these communities, to go to some of these places, instead of going there ourselves, they're allowed to lie about what it is that we believe. But don't buy into some of this stuff, to some of this rhetoric, right? Don't buy into the grievance community, the grievance culture, right? That's what's hurting us, honestly. We have to do better. I expect the Marxist left to not do better, right? I understand why some of the people who are uninformed, misinformed, or disinformed, I understand why they're not doing better, right? Because we got to get them the right information. But those of us who if you are on the right, if you claim to be a conservative, if you claim to be MAGA, if you're not working to get all of the information and be correct about what and know exactly what it is that you're doing, and by the way, know exactly who it is that you're affiliating with online. Because here's the thing, folks, these folks, they're not, there's a reason why you can have, you know, the environmentalists, why you can have the BLM activists, why you can have the immigration activists, why you can have the pro-Hamas groups and the anti-Semitic groups and all of these folks, because the only thing they really agree on is the fact that they want to tear down the system. And they don't really agree on much else other than that. But you need to know that disagreeing with the system, disagreeing with what is going on, doesn't mean that you have to tear down the system. Doesn't mean, what you need to do is do a better job of engaging with the system, right? Of removing the corruption and the misinformation and the disinformation. And you do that by providing right information. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to the folks over at American Crossfire who are tuning in. Some of our most faithful viewers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All right, let's see. What do we got here as our next story? Speaking of the horseshoe left, or the horseshoe right, let's talk about the horseshoe left, right? Let's talk about the fact that, let's see, you've already got now, you got in the city of, in the city of New York, they have basically elected, as a Democrat, they've already elected a Democratic Socialist as the mayor there in New York. And that is going so well for them over there. You've got now in the city of Los Angeles where we've got, you know, a person, you've got a current mayor with socialist tendencies who is leading, and then you've got an out and outright socialist who is not far behind, socialist / communist, who is going to be joining them in the runoff election. Well, now in Washington, D.C., oh, by the way, let me not forget Mr. Brandon Johnston, who also is a socialist Marxist. He'll never admit to that. Well, maybe he probably would. Who is the mayor of the city of Chicago. And now it looks like there is going to be another Democratic Socialist elected mayor in Washington, D.C., or at least they won the primary, which means chances are, the Democratic primary, which means chances are she is likely going to be the mayor of Washington, D.C. And if you doubt whether or not she's a socialist, well, just listen to this.
Notion that government must put people first. We are native Washingtonians. And we are people who made their home in D.C. We are students and working families and retirees. We are Gen Z.
So yeah, and if that wasn't enough from her own words that she is a Democratic Socialist, well, look at what NBC News has to say. Democratic Socialist Janice Lewis George wins Washington, D.C. mayoral primary. Now, let's go here. It says, read a little bit. Washington, D.C. City Council member Janice Lewis George, a Democratic Socialist, has won the Democratic primary for mayor. NBC News projects putting her in line manage the capital city and its relationship with President Donald Trump. Now, with 3/4 of the expected vote tallied, Louis George led Kenyon McDuffie, a former city council member, 53% to 37%. McDuffie has conceded the primary to Louis George Thursday morning. Earlier this morning, I called Councilmember Janice Louis George to congratulate her on her victory and wish her success as she prepares for the general election, McDuffie said in a statement. Louis George, who has held a council seat stretching from northern corner of the city since she was first elected in 2020, also faced 5 other Democratic hopefuls who received single-digit support. Louis is on course to be a heavy general election favorite in the deep blue city, and the primary marks another major advance for Democratic socialists in municipal politics around the country. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani is in his first year in office after a swift and surprising rise in his city, while Los Angeles Council member Nithya Raman advanced to a runoff earlier this month in a race for mayor there, where an early Los Angeles Times poll indicates a close race against current Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who is a Democrat. Now, let's break this down a little bit here. So first of all, I want you to understand what we're talking about here. First of all, this is not just a takeover of Washington, D.C. or Blue City. First of all, it is a systematic takeover of the Democratic Party. Notice she is a Democratic socialist, not a Democrat. Or at least she may be registered as a Democrat so that she can run as a Democrat, but she is a Democratic socialist, which means she is a socialist. All right? I don't care what they tell you. Democratic socialists believe in the government controlling the means of production. Socialists believe in the government controlling the means of production. They are they are Democrats that promote socialism. And if you are someone who believes in socialism, then maybe there's someone that you want to take a look at. But if you want to know the outcomes of socialist societies, just look at Mao's China. Just look at Lenin and Stalin's Soviet Union. Take a look at North Korea. Take a look at Cuba. If you want to know how good socialism works, right? Well, those are the places where you want to look. And before I get another person who says, well, what about Norway? What about Scandinavian countries? Yeah, Scandinavian countries, several of them flirted with socialism for a very brief period of time. And when they saw that the amount of revenue that they were bringing in went down, when they saw their GDP go down, when they realized that it wasn't working, they quickly switched over to a free market economy with big social safety nets, meaning big taxes, lots of government programs. Right? And even with that, in several other cases right now, they're dealing with some real challenges many of those countries are dealing with some serious challenges with their economies. But they are not, let me say it again, they are not socialist countries. To be clear. Anyway, this is someone, and this doesn't just create that issue. It also creates another issue. A big part of her campaign was she is going to fight against Donald Trump. Right? Now, I'm sorry, but if you don't understand this, Washington, D.C. is partially governed by the federal government, by Congress, and by the White House, right? Their city council, their mayor have limited control or ability, or at least part of that, as a part of the charter of Washington, D.C., is in the hands of the federal government. And when you say that you're going to basically fight against them, you're picking a battle that you can't win. Not only are you picking a battle that you can't win, but you're seeking to make enemies of someone who has the ability to limit or remove the control or your ability to do anything within your jurisdiction. It's just plain dumb. You're going to start off, I'm going to make enemies of someone that I actually need to work with. But see, it doesn't matter because that's how the left is winning elections right now. At least in her particular case, she can say that that being mayor and your relationship and the way in which you handle the federal government, it's important. The way in which you handle Washington, D.C., and you handle the president and you handle Congress, it is important. But what does that have to do with being mayor of L.A.? What does that have to do with being mayor of New York or of Chicago? It's got nothing, very little. Most of the decisions, in fact, let me just say this. Most of the decisions you will make in local government are not right or left, they're right or wrong. I can say this as a person who's a school board member, who sits on a school board where we've had majority Republicans, we've had majority Democrats, and we all get along pretty well. And we cover the spectrum when it comes to political ideologies. And I can tell you, we vote together probably 95 to 99% of the time because we break everything down based on what's a part of our core mission and what are the facts and information that have to do with what it is that we do. And we all look at those facts together. We have a shared basis of information and facts, right? And we look at that information and we come to the same conclusion because we operate on the same, look, the truth is the truth. The facts are the facts. This is the data. These are the facts. These are our values, and we apply them and we arrive at the same place, right? If you have the same variables and you're using the same equations, you're going to arrive at the same place, right? And I get that there are federal issues that people want to speak on and yada, 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 but that's not the role of local government. That's not your job. That really isn't. Are the streets paved? Right? Are the utilities working? Are the schools working? Are the kids safe at school? Right? Are the streets safe? Is law enforcement doing their job? Is the fire department doing their job? Right? To the degree that you are regulating business and zoning, is it easy to avail themselves of the process? Does the process protect the people? That's it. And anyway, the point is that these people are trying to gain more and more and more and more control. And here's the thing, it's even more insidious at the local level because most of the policies that are going to affect you day to day are local. Local, state, and local, most of them. And these are also the people who are going to rise up. These are the people, and especially these big city mayors and politicians, they're the ones that are going to support and help raise money for and get support for the people who are going to run for the state legislature, for the county board of supervisors. They're going to start to build these groups, right? They're going to build these support structures that are going to support socialism. Socialism means taking from people to produce and giving it to the government. Let me say that again. Taking from the people who produce. Do you have a job? Do you pay taxes? You're someone who produces. Taking from you and giving it to the government, not to the people. Because see, they believe that they are the more moral, right? They're more moral than you are. That's why they know better how to raise your children. They know better what you should eat and what your children should learn. They're better and more moral, and they're smarter than you are. That's what they believe. They truly believe that they are smarter than you are. So they don't have to give you the full fact. They don't have to give you all the information. They just give you the information that they want you to have so that you will do what they want you to do. And even after that, if you don't do what they want you to do, well, then they'll take your right to make that decision away from you. That's what socialists do. Democratic socialists just give you the ability to elect them so that they can do that to you. Voila. And that is what is going on in Washington, D.C. So we've got two of them who are out there right now, right? Then you've got in L.A., no matter what, you're going to have socialist or socialist leaning. Because I'm sorry, I don't see, other than one being a declared socialist and one being a person who advocates socialist policies, I don't see a difference between the two. I honestly do not. One Indian's, one's black. One's Indian, one's black. That's it. That's the only difference I see between those two folks. But in any case, and then by the way, you also have Chicago, Sacramento to a degree. Just almost most of the major cities in the West. Anyway, and if you doubt whether or not there are socialists out there, doubt the power of socialists, just take a look at our labor unions and what they have had the ability to do, right? A lot of these labor unions are in fact socialist fronts. Folks like SCIU, they're nothing but a socialist Marxist front. That's all they are. And that's how they were able to get the billionaire tax qualified for the ballot. That's right. They are proposing a billionaire's tax here in California. I'll be working on an op-ed on this pretty soon. But it is now qualified for the ballot. We're basically, let me pull this up here. This being reported by Politico. California billionaire's tax qualifies for the ballot, setting up a costly fight. A proposed tax on California billionaires' assets has officially qualified for the November ballot, igniting the next phase of a brawl that has consumed the deeply democratic state. Excuse me. The Secretary of State announced Wednesday that a healthcare union, SCIU, had collected enough signatures to put a one-time 5% levy on the ultra-rich before voters intensifies in a fight that has already upended California politics, even as Governor Gavin Newsom and deep-pocketed Silicon Valley foes galvanized to fight the tax. Some opponents had held out hope it would fail to qualify. But now the measure is headed for a public vote, pitting populist fury at billionaires and anti-Trump sentiment against warnings from both Democrats like Newsom and allied business titans that it will backfire. Proponents, including Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, a socialist, argue the measure is a vital corrective to federal spending cuts that will otherwise lead to shutter hospitals and massive job losses. Its foes, including Silicon Valley giants like Google founder Sergey Brin, warned the tax will undermine California's business climate and hurt the state's budget by driving critical tax dollars out of the state. Now, I need you to understand something quite important in this. Both those who are quoted in this article as both supporters and opponents are Democrats or socialists, right? These are people who advocate for socialistic policies. Bernie Sanders and Gavin Newsom, the head of Google, yeah, him too. But the difference is that there's a different kind of understanding in terms of what it is going to mean, right? See, the socialists, the Bernie Sanders and the SCIUs and the Marxists, they don't care what this is going to do. They don't care that what's going to happen is, because by the way, we've already seen it, the people who will be affected by this are going to leave the state of California, right? They're going to leave. In fact, they are already leaving the state of California. California has seen somewhere around a $2 trillion drain of wealth and assets, right? $2 trillion of people who've left the state of California because they don't want to have to pay 5% of that $2 trillion. They don't want to have to pay that to the state government. And by the way, we're talking in total, that'll be about $20 billion. I think that's pretty, if my math is correct. Let's see, 10% is about 10% of $2 trillion that they've left. That would be about, that 10% would be 200. So 5% would be about $20 billion. Do you realize that doesn't even cover 1 year's deficit? It doesn't even cover one year of the deficit here in the state of California. Think about that. Also, as a result, because that's left the state of California, the jobs that were affiliated with that have left California. The income that was being generated, that $2 trillion was generating, yeah, that income is gone. So now you're going to be affecting the ongoing budget. So while on one hand you may be bringing some money in via this one-time tax on assets, right? But what you're also going to see is you're seeing the income, all of the jobs created gone, which means not just the income from the assets, right? The income generated from the people who own the assets, but the income generated from the employees is now gone because those jobs are gone, right? Wells Fargo, here's a great example. Wells Fargo, based in San Francisco, California, moved their asset management, represents about 20% of their revenue. Their asset management division now is no longer in California. It's in Florida. Want to know why it's in Florida? That's where all the assets went. That's where most of the people who left California with a bunch of assets, they moved to Florida. No income tax. Lower corporate tax. Lower regulation. See, the left, in particular Marxist socialists, and by the way, socialism and Marxism is all based on their policies, their economic theories based on how they wished the world was. Free market economies, free market economics is based on the world as it is, right? Conservatives tend to pass and legislate based on the world as it is. And these folks, well, they don't care how the world is. They don't care what the overall impact is. All they care about is what's your intent? Do you mean to do good? Do you hope and you wish? Are you hoping and you wishing? Well, hopes and wishes do not pay the bills, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just be frank with you about that. And we got a problem if we don't fix this real quick. All right, folks, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word, and get your Hog Holster today. All of our parting shots today are going to be brought to you by the Babylon Bee, fake news that you can trust. And God, I love these. I love these headlines. They are just hilarious. This first one here. Iran wins $300 billion cash prize for placing second in war. Yeah, they're going to get $300 billion, and they lost the war. Funny how that works. Oh, here we go. World leaders line up to ask Trump to bomb their countries for a while and then give them a few $100 billion. Folks, I have to tell you, if you're not getting a theme here, you should be getting a theme. And that has to do with what even conservatives are thinking about this deal, this memorandum of understanding. Oh, here we go. Learning from Trump, man successfully negotiates wife down to absolutely everything she wants. Ooh, ouch. And then finally, world breathes sigh of relief as terrorists promise to be good. And that's pretty much what we're depending on with this particular deal. I'll say this, and I know, yeah, I'm going to give the president some grief over this. I don't think this is a good deal at all. At least if the final agreement winds up being as this MOU is. But I think the ridicule is well deserved. I think it is. I think it's well deserved. I don't think this is going to wind up being what it is in the end, because I think he's going to see all of this ridicule and the people aren't buying it. But in the end, it's still funny. So anyway. All right, folks. Well, before we go, let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got Hitman Industries rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase online at hitmanindustries.net. We've got the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Please visit them at cragop.org. We've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, we've got the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, and that would be at uscombatgear.com. And once again, I want to remind you, sign up to get all of your 2A news delivered to your inbox at 2anews.us. And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a day. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow being Free for All Friday. Till then, y'all have fun. Y'all stay safe. And we will see you mañana.